What's up YouTube, it's the one and only legend of winning, aka Low, and I'm back with another video. Now I'm pretty sure everyone is aware of the complete and utter bomb that was released last night. Boston Celtics and the Cleveland Cavaliers missed out on Paul George because he is taking his talents to the Oklahoma City Thunder. The trade is fairly simple, Paul George going to OKC, and in return the Indiana Pacers are receiving Victor Oladipo and Sabonis. Now a lot of people are completely upset about this trade, and rightfully so. The Boston Celtics fans feel like they have the assets to match that offer, and then when it comes to the Cleveland Cavaliers, not only do they feel like they had the assets, but they also feel as if that was the missing piece that they needed, not only to compete for next year's championship, but potentially even to keep LeBron James on their roster due to him being a free agent next year. However, over the last couple of hours, as time has continued to pass, I've seen multiple people, for whatever reason, misinform their audience, their Twitter followers, and their subscribers on what exactly is going on, and claiming that this right here was a bad deal for Indiana. Even though I completely understand why you want to criticize Indiana, the Pacers obviously should have traded Paul George a year ago, or at least during the trade deadline this regular season, because that would make the most sense. However, what I've heard over the past couple of hours is just complete lies and misinformed rhetoric that I am quite honestly tired of hearing. Now I'm making this video to rightfully inform people on what exactly Indiana did and why they did it, and why trading Paul George to the Cleveland Cavaliers or the Boston Celtics quite honestly just didn't make any sense, and looking at what they received in return, is arguably the best move they potentially could have made. So before I talk about OKC and the Thunder and what exactly they gave up and what they received and why exactly it works for OKC, let's actually talk about Boston and Cleveland, because I'm pretty sure that's what a lot of people are more interested in. When it comes to Boston and Cleveland, both of them obviously needed a wing player such as Paul George, who can play at an elite level on both ends of the floor, so he can help them compete in years and years to come, especially with a lot of teams in the NBA making these massive moves over the last week or so. Boston and Cleveland definitely need to get their hands in the mix of a lot of free agents this year. However, when it comes to Boston, it's extremely obvious that Danny Ainge just does not want to move any quality pieces. And then when it comes to the Cleveland Cavaliers, I just scratch my head because I have no idea what they're doing. The fact that they fired their GM literally a week before the free agency began makes no sense to me. Also, it's pretty obvious that the Cleveland Cavaliers had no quality players at all, which is why they had to introduce a third team into the mix and try to get some younger assets to appeal to the Indiana Pacers. For those out there who are unaware, the Cleveland Cavaliers have been in talks with multiple teams, including the Denver Nuggets and the Phoenix Suns, to try to get something going with the Indiana Pacers. The first offer included Kevin Love and potentially a mid-level draft pick that was heavily protected to go to the Indiana Pacers. For whatever reason, I keep hearing people believing that that's a good move. It's not. Kevin Love, even though yes, you can argue he's a better player than Victor Oladipo, at this moment Kevin Love is 29 years old, he only has 2 years left on his contract, and he deals with injuries. So not only are you going to put yourself back in the same situation you were in over the last year when it comes to the contracts, because more than likely Kevin Love will just leave at the end of his contract, you also get older and receive very little to any potential assets, because a mid-first round pick really doesn't amount to much, especially because you just received 2 young assets, both of which were selected in the top 13th of their respective draft class. So even though yes, you can make an argument that Kevin Love will be more productive, getting a 29-year-old power forward who deals with injuries, who's going to be an expiring contract within a year, literally makes no sense. But then we move on to the Boston Celtics. Now when it comes to the Celtics, we all know the Celtics have the assets to make the right moves. But Danny Ainge, as stingy as he has been over the last several months to a year now, Danny Ainge decided not to move any quality pieces. Now I know a lot of people are going to tell me they've seen all the rumors on Twitter and how Danny Ainge allegedly has already offered 3 first-round picks and 2 starters to the Indiana Pacers to receive Paul George. However, Danny Ainge allegedly was going to give them Jay Crowder and Avery Bradley, and those are going to be the 2 starters. Avery Bradley is an expiring contract. Then you had Jay Crowder, who was an okay starter. However, I'd much rather have Victor Oladipo. He only has 2 years on his contract. So more than likely, you're going to lose those pieces as well. So then the next step is, what type of picks are these? Coming from multiple sources, the rumors are the picks did not include the Brooklyn Nets pick, nor did it include the Los Angeles Lakers pick. So more than likely, Danny Ainge is going to give the Boston pick, which is more than likely going to be a bottom of the draft pick. Then you have potentially the Memphis Grizzlies pick or the Los Angeles Clipper pick, both of which are heavily protected. So again, these are not quality picks. So it's not like we're talking about we're going to get a top 5 or a top 10 player in next year's draft. If that was the case, then you have a very legitimate argument. Or even if you want to throw in Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum, that also makes sense as well. However, when people make this argument claiming that the Boston Celtics had the best offer on the table, they did not. Victor Oladipo is a very quality player who's 25 years old, actually just turned 25 years old, and then you have Sabonis, who was the 11th pick in last year's draft. We're not referring to older players. Both players have a lot of years left on their contracts. Both players have a lot of years to prove how great they can be. And in my opinion, Victor Oladipo, out of all the players that were being talked about in any of these trades, including Kevin Love and Avery Bradley, in my opinion, Victor Oladipo is by far the most valuable player. He's under contract for multiple years, he's 25 years old, and he's proven, when given the minutes and the opportunity, that he is a very productive player, especially if you utilize him correctly. In Orlando, I know a lot of people look at his numbers and they're not completely impressed. However, keep in mind, when he was in Orlando, it's not like they knew what they were doing. His first year in the NBA, that terrible organization that plays in Orlando decided to put him at the point guard position, even though it's obvious that he's a shooting guard. And even with that type of misrepresentation of his talents, he still was able to produce at a very consistent rate. The next year after that, he went up from a 14-point scorer to an 18-point scorer and was extremely consistent across the board, increasing nearly every aspect of the game when it comes to efficiency, grabbing rebounds, and assists as well. And in his third year in the NBA, you're probably going to argue that he plateaued. And yes, it does seem like on a bigger scale that he did. However, again, that terrible organization in Orlando didn't know what they were doing, brought other players in, so now Victor Oladipo was on the bench. However, when given the opportunity, Victor Oladipo shined immediately. Victor Oladipo in the 2015-2016 season, the last 40 games he actually started, so Scott Skiles made the decision to put him in the starting lineup. In those 40 games, Victor Oladipo averaged 19 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, shot 47 to 48% from the field, and 40% from 3. So Victor Oladipo has consistently proven not only is he getting better, but if you give him the opportunity, he can be a 20-point scorer, maybe even more, while grabbing 5 rebounds and 4 to 5 assists as well. So Victor Oladipo is a very quality player, 25 years old, and he's under contract. So if you're Indiana, you don't have to worry about getting into contract bouts with other teams because he's already getting paid. But another complete myth that I'm hearing from people about OKC is that they lost a trade. In my honest opinion, even though I do realize someone has to win and lose, and you can make a very legitimate argument that Indiana did lose, especially because they should have traded Paul George a year ago. However, OKC made a very good move as well. OKC had this roster with the idea that Kevin Durant was going to come back from free agency. However, once he didn't, they obviously need to recalibrate and add more talented players on the roster. Even though Victor Oladipo has a lot of potential that still has not been seen yet, obviously Paul George is already at that stage of his career where he can come in and play with nearly anyone and be very productive. And that's all they needed in OKC. So they moved Victor Oladipo, who was making $21 million, brought in PG, who's making less than $20 million, and now not only do they have more room in the salary cap, but also they have a better quality player. Another reason why they had to make this move is because Russell Westbrook is on the last year of his contract. This is a storyline, for whatever reason, people consistently overlooked. OKC did not sign a massive extension with Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook basically just gave them another year to figure out what they wanted to do, which I feel like was completely fair on Russell Westbrook, and I do applaud him for giving his organization a chance to build something around him. So OKC needed to make sure they got something big in this year's free agency, and that was Paul George. Now, I know what a lot of people are saying, that Paul George is a one-year rental, but this right here is the biggest reason why, if you are OKC, you wanted to make sure you got Paul George, and it's simply because next year's free agency, not only do you have a lot of other pieces that could be moved around, DeMarcus Cousins is a free agent as well, and then you also have other quality perimeter players such as Trevor Ariza that could easily be added to this team and give them a depth of defensive presence that they desperately need on the perimeter. But you also have the ability to re-sign not only Russell Westbrook but Paul George, because there is a massive amount of money that's coming off the cap next year. So not only is Paul George a free agent next year, but also Russell Westbrook and Enes Kanter. Kanter is making around 17 to 18 million this year. Then you have Paul George, who's making around the same amount of money, and then you have Russell Westbrook, who's making around 28 to 30 million this year. So that's a lot of money, not only to get free agents, but also to make some room to sign Russell Westbrook to that supermax contract that he desperately and rightfully deserved. So keep all of this in mind when people are telling you that this was a bad move for both teams. It just doesn't make any sense. So shout out to Indiana. I feel like they've done a really solid job. Obviously, again, they could have done better. And shout out to OKC because they made a pretty big move that a lot of people were not expecting. So shout out to both of those teams. But with all that being said, I'll see you all later. Peace.